All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to our March 12th, 2021 Directors Meeting. As Vic had just stated, the agenda has changed a little bit from the one I sent out to you earlier this week. The meeting recording, the agenda, and any of the materials that we share out today will be posted to our website later today. I'll drop that link into the chat in just a moment. But at this time, most of you have done this, but if you just joined in, we are going to be taking attendance today by having you put your name and your site or school into the chat, please. So that'll be that. And then Vic, I'm going to turn it over to you to start with financial updates.
Okay. Everyone should be using the new CASA system. And there's a lot of stuff in there that I like, and there's a couple of things that I'm not real happy with, and that is, it's very rigid. The system opens and closes to a definite window, where in the past you could mail stuff to me. It could be a couple of weeks late, it didn't matter. So we've got to adjust with the times. The biggest thing in CASA that I've seen is people will send in a claim spreadsheet, and it may not have attendance data, or they may have a general ledger where the total doesn't match what's on the claim spreadsheet. So take a look before you upload it. Make sure that these things, that the numbers match up, and that you've got your attendance in, and then it's a pretty easy process for it to go through the system. And if you have any problems with it, just send me an email. There's also something in the system that you can send it in, and they've been asking me to do more in the system, but sometimes I don't get it right away in the systems, but when you send me an email, I can respond to it a little bit faster. Okay, I've been getting questions on carryover. We don't do our carryover until May, right before contracts, because if you have approved carryover, it'll be put into your upcoming contract. And of course, with the 21st century, all carryover must be approved. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to have carryover again this year, and I'm double checking on that. So we've had a lot of bumps in the road this year. So okay, the next one, billing staff time to evaluation. Some of you have asked me about that. You've got people collecting data, and the contracted services should be for your local evaluator. And the other category in evaluation could be used for staff time in the data gathering for the local evaluator.
Okay. Do we have any questions about the financial updates that Vic just provided? Okay, feel free to unmute and ask those questions, or you can type them into the chat and we'll get those responded to as well. So we're going to move on to program update.
Okay. I actually have a PowerPoint on this one that I think would be useful for us to show you. But an overview very quickly is that the GEPRA measures, the new ones, start this summer. However, we're still going to report to the end of the year the old GEPRA data until the December end of the year. The feds have promised training, and this is going to be a kind of a transition year. And we'll have some sort of a training in Iowa. I don't know if the feds are going to be opening it up to everyone, or whether I have to attend the training and then come back and do a training with you guys. That's not clear yet, but as soon as it is, I'll let you know, and we'll take care of that.
Okay. Vic, I do have the PowerPoint and I'm happy to pull that up. I do want to point out that we're tentatively thinking about this June 8th, 2021 date. That was another date that we had tentatively identified as a workshop date. So the March 30th workshop, which formerly was called an institute, which are the events that previously had happened in Council Bluffs and Dubuque, are going to be virtual because of the pandemic. So we have identified March 30th as the first workshop date. We've also tentatively identified June 8th as a workshop date. And if things align, we may be able to do the new GEPRA measure training during that training date. So again, look for emails, more to come. Vic, we do have a question before I pull up the PowerPoint. This is from Loris. He would like to know if you are in year 5 and have carryover and you do not receive a grant, what happens with those monies?
Well, what we do is we do a no-cost extension for 1 quarter. So we give you 3 more months to spend the money, and usually that helps you to run a summer program.
Okay. Loris, feel free to unmute if you have follow-up questions, or again, drop those into the chat. So, and it looks like we do have that. He says, thank you. Okay, so everyone should be able to see a PDF of the slides right now. Is that what you're seeing on your screen? I'm seeing some head shakes, so yep, that's good, thank you. All right, so Vic, if there are slides in particular you would like me to navigate to, that's fine, or I'll just scroll until you tell me to stop then.
Okay, yeah.
Nope.
Whoa.
Yeah, sorry, it went so quick.
So this information, most of it came in on March 9th, which was Tuesday, and I got another update yesterday, and I last night sent Crystal 2 more slides that are pretty timely. But so this is, you're probably the first state to be getting this information down to the grantee level. All right, next one, please. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about in this presentation. It's just an overview, what GEPRA is about, an outline of the measures, timeline, a couple of details on each of the new measures, a little bit about training, and then at the end we'll do questions. Okay, the GEPRA stands for the Government Performance Results Act. And this is, going to Congress. It's our data. And these GEPRA measures have kept us afloat over the past years when there's been, calls for us to be completely eliminated as a program. So the GEPRA is a good thing. Next slide. Okay, an overview of the measures. We did have 14 old GEPRA measures, and we're going to be replacing those with 5 new measures, and they all focus on improvement rather than proficiency. And I think that's significant for the work we do with at-risk kids, because we see improvement all the time, but that improvement often does not reach the proficiency level. And so I think that with the new measures, we're going to be able to have a better case that we are doing a great job serving kids. Okay, so this slide came from the U.S. Department of Ed rather than Tactical, and this is just their overview that, the first GEPRA measure is academic achievement. And, once again, the GEPRA measures are specific to certain grades. So your academic achievement is going to be grades 4 through 8. And then the second one is the grade point average. Well, it's not exactly the second one, but it's for grades 7 and 8 and 10 and 12, so secondary. And you may not be familiar with doing the grade point, but we've got some information on how to figure that out. And I think once we get used to it, it'll be, a little bit easier to work with. then the percentage of youth throughout all the grades participating, in the program, school year and summer school, and we're looking at attendance in that, and they've changed that a little bit. They're trying to get more attendance information than in the past. Okay, next slide. Then the final two measures are behavior, which, is going to be pretty easy because every principal has a student information system and they're tracking behavior. So if they have a list of the kids in the program, they can provide a report on did that behavior improve or not. And then finally, student engagement and learning, and that can be done with a teacher survey because we're asking teachers. Now, when we think of teachers, for our program, it doesn't mean a certified teacher. If you've got somebody who's not a certified teacher that's working with the kids, for example, maybe they're doing physical education, that person who knows the kids can answer this survey. So I don't want you to think that it's only the certified teachers.
Okay.
Okay.
Before we move on, there's a question on the previous slide, so I'm going to move back up. Christine is interested to know, what is an unweighted GRP mean?
Well, we're going to get to that further down. We've got a breakdown on the GPA.
Okay,
it'll
thank
make
you.
it a little easier to understand. Okay, so especially for our community groups, make sure that you have a data sharing agreement in place. And the GEPRA is about outcome data. And all GEPRA data is reported in aggregate. That means we don't need student level data, so we're not violating FERPA. And the district only needs to provide aggregate data for all of the 21st century data requests. Also, the districts have a signed assurance by the superintendent and the principal that includes data sharing. So, we just gotta get together on the details, and we should be able to have no issues with, getting that data. Okay. Here's the implementation timeline. And, this is going to be a little confusing at first. We're still doing the old GEPRA this year, except summer of this year is when we start collecting, but not reporting, the new GEPRA measures, which, the GEPRA measures start in the summer, and, they're going to report a whole year. So by next year, we'll be reporting the new GEPRA measures, and then the following school year, we'll have forgotten all about those old GEPRA measures, and we'll be, seasoned veterans in the new measures, hopefully. All right, now take a look at the summer one. That's going to be a little bit confusing because, for the first time, you're going to be collecting some new data. In the fall of 2021, you're going to also be collecting but reporting the old GEPRA data. In December, we'll be completely done, and I'll certify all that, the old data, and then they'll be revising the APR system so that when you log in again in 2022, the system will be with those new measures in there. Okay. So what's not changing in the APR? Your grantee information, center details, the activities, the 16 categories, those don't change. Staffing doesn't change. Participation's not changing. And the GEPRA is going to be reported for grades 1 through 12. Okay. What is going to be changing is hopefully the ability to tell a better story about what we do. Every state will report on every GEPRA. And this is going to be true for all the competitions. All students are going to be reported, not just regular attendees. So that's a big change. You know, you got some kids that didn't attend 30 days and you couldn't report them. With the new measures, you will be able to report those students. Participation now is going to be reported in hours instead of days. Who can tell me what state requires 60 hours of contact time? You know, we've been getting ready for this. So it's not going to be so much of a shock because we're used to looking at that time with kids in hours. And it didn't change from the original, which was 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. But by doing 60 hours a month, you can do something 7 days a week and get your reimbursement. In the past, if you did something on a Saturday, you may or may not have gotten a reimbursement. So we're just trying to change with the times. Now, this is real important, and I put a red box around it. Frequency of reporting. Instead of 3 times a year, we're only going to be doing this twice a year. We're going to do it in the summer, and then we're going to do it in the end of the year.
I think you have some people that are pretty happy about that, Vic.
Me too. Okay. There's not going to be short-term based entry or deadlines. And this I got from the feds. I'm not exactly sure on that. They always have deadlines. Because the very next sentence is data entry will have APR section based entry and deadlines. Anyway, some states change things around. We pretty much use the federal deadlines and just, you know, we don't need to have 2 weeks for somebody to take a look at all the data. It doesn't take that long for us to, you know, copy it and have our end done. So remember, in the system, we're always reporting the previous year. That's why in the summer of this year, we've got to start collecting that new GEPRA data. So next year, when we report it, we'll be ready. Okay, now what starts in 2022, early summer, we'll do our setup. Tim and I will do that in the system, updating any profiles and centers. And then in midsummer, you guys will be reporting activity, staffing, and participation only. And then by the end of the year, you're going to report your outcomes. So it's think about it as one reporting period, but in 2 parts. So it's a little different. And this is what the feds came up with for hours. And they broke it down into bands so that they could track, you know, students who, you know, had attended up to 15 hours and down to those who attended over 540 hours. If you look at our 60 hours a month minimum and you take that by 10 months and, you know, you take away for spring break and Christmas break, we still are probably over 540 hours. But, you know, this is not good practice. And on Wednesday, we talked about it. And I let them have it on this. I says, what? You know, we're shortening the GEPRA measures, and then you've got all these bands. That's a lot of extra work for the grantees. Next slide, please. So the feds changed. This is unprecedented for them to, with overnight, to say, okay, we'll reduce the bands. You know, and they are really responding to the needs of states and grantees out there. So now we have fewer bands that we have to report, and notice the top one is only more than 270 hours. So that should be most of our kids in Iowa that are attending these programs. So that's a really good sign that this system is going to be better than the last. Cross your fingers. All right, now we're going to go into some details on these new measures. The first one is academic achievement. The percentage of students in grades 4 through 8 who participated during the school year and summer who demonstrate growth in reading and or language arts, whatever it's called, on state assessments. And then the second one is the percentage of grades 4 through 8 demonstrating growth in math. So let's go to the next slide. And here's how they suggested we would apply this. So if you had 12 students in grades 4 to 8, of these 12, how many showed growth in reading on their assessments? 10. So next, and then when we break it down, you entered you reported 12 and you reported the growth in there. And this is kind of the small p. And we will have to define what constitutes growth. We probably already have that definition, but I'll get it from the department.
Okay. Vic, we do have a question. This is from Katie. She would like to know if their program serves students in grades 2 through 4, will they only report on the 4th grade students?
Yes.
Okay, so for programs serving K through 3rd grade, you're only reporting on attendance data and student engagement data for those youth, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are you ready for the next slide then?
Yeah, and for whatever reason, the feds chose grade 4.
Okay.
I'm not going to argue with them and say, oh, can we go down to grade 3? Okay, this is a little summary about the first measure, okay? It's going to be key for you to have a data agreement in place, especially CBOs. And then they want us to consider if the state already has this data, but and then we don't need to collect individual assessment data.
Okay.
All right. Second GEPRA measure is percentage of students in grades 7, 8, and 10 through 12 who attended school year and summer with a prior year unweighted GPA of less than 3 who demonstrated an improved GPA. Let's go to the next slide on this one. So you reported 12 students, and of these 12, how many had a GPA of less than 3? And your answer is going to be 5. System will prompt you and how many had an improvement on their GPA, and you had 3. So next slide. Again, we've got some wiggle room on defining the GPA, but the feds did a really good job with a table that shows how to calculate GPA and how it relates to grades. Every student gets a letter grade, and that is going to be really simple to take that table and say, oh, Johnny went from a C to a B. Here's what that GPA is. Let's go to the next one. Look at that. It's a crosswalk showing how you can do letter grades and the corresponding GPA. So if, Susie went from a B to an A, her GPA went from a 3 to a 4. If a student got a D, their GPA would be a 1. And if they went from a D to a C, their GPA increased from a 1 to a 2. And of course, if they failed, that GPA is a 0.
Okay.
So this measure, they're trying to use letter grades. And, even with this pandemic, students have been passed, and they got a letter grade on some of their work that they didn't know. I don't think that we took thousands of kids and just said, oh, you're on hold. The system's moving forward. So even if the school doesn't provide the GPA data, we can use letter grade data to answer this measure. So it's a little bit different, but for secondary, most of these high school students are looking at their GPA because going into college, that's information that is a constant in their lives. Okay. Next measure, number 3, school day attendance. So for this one, we're looking at grades 1 through 12 in the program who had school day attendance at or below 90% of the prior school year and who demonstrated an improved attendance rate in the current school year. Next slide. So if you had 250 students in your grades, how many students had school day attendance of less than 90%? And maybe you've got 20 that are chronically absent. And of these 20, who had an attendance rate of less than 90 in the school year? And how many had, of these 20, how many improved their attendance? And maybe you've got 3. Yeah, I know it's kind of convoluted there. I would have wished that they would have just asked us, the total numbers, and then they did the analysis on their end. So like I said, this is going to take us a little bit of time to get used to. Okay.
So Vic, we do have a question that's connected to this attendance. So this is from Lynn.
Okay.
She would like to know tracking hours versus days. If a student leaves earlier than the end of the program, are we now required to track how many hours they attend each day?
Well, that hasn't been decided yet. We need to do a crosswalk table for how we will be tracking hours compared with days. And
okay.
So that is a good question, but one of my goals is to get the data to the feds that they need without making this a huge burden. I mean, we've already got so many things to do because of the federal statutes and everything. Yes, I know it's a lot of extra work, and we won't go there unless we absolutely have to. So we've got to work on some tables that, will define how what we currently do is going to be translated into that. And we're going to be working with our evaluation committee to work out some of those details and hopefully develop maybe some templates and guide sheets for you. And I have actually more details on the APR that we got on Thursday that I'll be going over with the evaluation committee. And, all of our committee meetings are open, so you're welcome to sit in on that if you would like, but they are also recorded. So if you couldn't make the meeting time, you can go to the Alliance website and view the recording.
Mm-hmm. And when this PowerPoint presentation is concluded, we'll go back to the agenda, and I do have the information for that then too. So, all right. So more to come on that, Lynn, and anybody else who is interested in that.
Okay, we're on GEPRA measure 4. The percentage, this is going to be the percentage of students grades 1 through 12 during the school year who experienced a decrease in in-school suspensions compared to the previous school year. And, we've been talking about that for a long time. And when I would do my visits, I would ask the principal about that. Some of the principals right away, they could, generate a little report on their computers. And some of them, they just kind of knew the data from looking at the kids. But the building principal has access to that in the student information system. So we're going to have to get that information, and that'll be part of the official APR. So we're not going to ask teachers about behavior. We're going to actually get that data, suspension data improvement. So we're getting better quality data to report to Congress than in the past. And we're lessening the burden on teachers. We're going to be able to reduce the survey a little bit. Okay, so if you had 250 students, and of those 250 students, how many had in-school suspensions? And, if you had a number 20, the system would say then of the 20 students, how many had a decrease in the number of suspensions? And they put an example of 3, and, for Iowa, I would say, 19. It's probably more like us. This shows you a little breakdown again. And I think that this is, a pretty good measure for us. All right. The final GEPRA measure, percentage of students who demonstrated an improvement in engagement with learning. So this is going to be a survey for your teachers or staff members that are working with kids and can answer the questions. And so if you've got 150 students, of these 150, how many demonstrated improved in engagement and learning? So maybe 105. All right, next one. So breaking it down, you reported 150, and and this is looking at grades 1 through 5. So they're not doing every grade on this. And those elementary teachers have been more responsive to doing the surveys. So this will be another good positive change for us to show the work that we're doing.
Vic, we have a question regarding in-school suspension. It says,
okay.
Would time that a student has to be moved because of an out-of-control situation to a zone or behavior room during the school day count as an in-school suspension?
That's a local control issue. Your district would determine whether it's going to go in your student information system as a suspension or not. So those kinds of situations are the small p, and however your district handles that policy will be the data we use. So like I said, the principal has all that information in the student information system. I don't know if it's at the principal level, whether they decide whether it becomes a formal suspension or if there's a district policy, and those policies may vary from district to district. So, I can't answer that at the state level.
Okay. And then regarding this particular performance measure, Caitlin she just wants to confirm regarding engagement, it can be done by staff working with students, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let me go to the next slide then.
We even talked about you could have a counselor doing that if they know the child, has been making improvement. So it's a flexible measure. And And that's why I'm letting you know that it's not just a certified teacher. Training.
Hold on, Vic.
Um,
Sorry, I thought we had another question, but we're fine. Thank you.
Okay, so the feds had promised that there's going to be training and that they're going to have some webinars and technical assistance. And they promised a training and development calendar. And this came out on Tuesday, and on Wednesday we said, yeah. Can you give us more about this training? Because we need to get this rolling right away. Because in June, grantees have to start collecting this data. So on Thursday, we got this following slide.
Okay.
Upcoming training. Feds promised in the next 2 weeks they're going to, provide a data guide, and they're going to start in April with training and a webinar every month. Now, I don't know if the webinars, well, first off, they're going to train the state people first, so that'll be me and Tim, and then we're going to have well, they even promised trainings for grantees down at the bottom. And so this is a good thing. But sometimes, the Fed trainings aren't sufficient. So we're going to be working on this. And that's why I wanted to involve the evaluation committee, because they're a great group of folks, and they're very articulate. And that'll help us to, develop any Iowa information that we need to help you guys as we move forward with this. Okay, final slide is questions. We've answered a few of them throughout the presentation, and this is not going to be the last opportunity for questions. It's just, if you had any questions on this, Gepra. Also, let me reiterate that you should attend the evaluation committee meeting if you're more interested in it. We'll be going over this slide, and then I've got another one with a little bit more detail on it. And then through the evaluation committee, we'll be working on templates and things that we need to send out to the rest of you to collect the data.
Yeah. Vic, we have one more clarifying question before we go back to our regular agenda, and this is from Beth. She wants to clarify that regarding engagement, is staff school staff or out of school time staff?
Well, it's really any staff person who knows the child and can answer that question.
Okay.
Can I clarify on that further, Caitlin? But they do not have to be employed by the school, not necessarily, right?
They could be employed by the after-school program. I mean, if it's a community group.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Christine has a question. Is there a standard form to be used for data sharing agreements with the district, or is it not that formal?
Well, it hasn't been that formal. I mean, the superintendent and principal signs an assurance on their application, but if we need a data sharing agreement, I guess we could come up with one.
Okay. Crystal, Vic,
Yes.
This is John. So I know when we do our applications, we do those MOUs. Would that suffice for having that agreement for sharing information?
It should, because of the assurances that are signed.
I feel like somewhere in the Iowa After School Alliance world, we do have a template for a data sharing agreement. So Brittany or Emily, if you're on and are remembering something better than I am at the moment, please correct me. But I do feel like we have something out there for data sharing agreements. Yes, no?
I think you're right, Crystal, but I'd have to do some digging.
Yeah, let us do some follow-up with that for people, and we'll be happy to share that out. So if we have it, great. And if it's something that we maybe need to take a look at to develop to make your lives better or easier, we can look into that as well. And then again, Vic, Christine's question about what does the unweighted GPA mean?
Well, they're not using a weighted average.
So Christine, hopefully as we continue to move forward with these trainings, we'll have a little bit more definition around some of those terms. Again, today was supposed to be an overview and an introductory lesson for that. So let's think on this, but I have made a note in my upcoming training notes to be sure to be able to address that issue. So
Yeah, it's
more
more
information to come.
college that they use a weighted GPA. And we're keeping this as simple as possible.
Okay. So again, Vic alluded to this a few times. The Evaluation and Sustainability Committee will be kind of tapped to help focus on these new changes to the GEPRA measures. So if you're not familiar with this, this committee actually did put together a really nice spreadsheet template that's available on the website currently for you to be able to track your data so that when you do your entry into the APR system, you can literally just follow along. Obviously, those templates will need to be updated and changed, and that'll be something that we'll be working with the Eval and Sustainability Committee upcoming in the future. The next committee meeting for that group is April 6th at 9 a.m. And right now we have that group as a conference call. If we choose to change that to a Zoom, just if we need to do some screen sharing or something like that, we will let everybody know and provide that link if anybody would like to join in that committee discussion that day.
We probably should change it now, to a Zoom meeting.
Okay. All right. So Brittany and Caitlin, I'll let you guys work on that then.
Sounds good.
Thank you. All right. Before we move on, we got a quick chat. Caitlin says, sounds good. Great. Okay. APR changes. Vic, I think maybe you addressed some of these, but if there's anything else that you need to point out.
Well, I want to thank everyone. You did an outstanding job in our last APR windows. The feds have hired contractors. They've modified the APR so it gives them the report that they need. And that's, monitoring, are you getting that data in? And so I started getting this last year in 2020, I started getting reports from my program officer that said, you're currently at 62% of your data. Please look into this. And so we would follow up with you guys on your data entry. And we did okay in the summer, but then in the fall, in the spring data, we got up to 100%, which is just outstanding. And so that's going to be continuing with the new GEPRA measures as well. So keep that on your radar, and programs, you got to get that data in. So officially, if you don't put your data in, you can be considered non-compliant, failing to report this data. So, and if you have any problems, contact myself, contact Tim. We're happy to help you to get this data in.
All right. Best practice webinar?
Yeah, hey, we're going to have a wonderful best practice webinar from Food and Nutrition about the USDA programs. And I would strongly encourage you guys to attend this because, a high quality program, if we're serving kids that have food insufficiency, we need to address that. Our programs are based on serving student needs, and that's, part of the student needs. It's not just their grades, it's the whole child. And, I can tell you that we're looking at integrating that into our application in the future. So, we need to do whatever we can to help these kids, not just with the academics, but with their meals, because there's a lot of research that if they don't have proper nutrition, they are, not going to learn as good as if they had that food. Okay, surprising to me, on Tuesday, the program director for 21st Century put up a slide and was talking about data from fees. There are no states that collect fees, and only a handful of states even allow fees. For example, our neighbor in Nebraska, if you run a 21st Century program, you cannot charge fees. Now, in Iowa, we still allow fees because it's in that 2003 guidance. So to be consistent, we do allow it, but the feds told us that they want the states to make sure they're monitoring, we are monitoring program income. So keep in mind that if you're not following the rules for fees, and they're clearly in Edgar, that you could be considered non-compliant. These, the rules for these fees are in federal statute. And right now, the feds are updating the non-regulatory guidance, and hopefully we'll have it by the end of the year, but I predict that they're going to remove fees from that, because it's, partnerships is much better way of, serving everyone in the community. Okay, next, site visits. I've got a few emails on that, so I figured, well, just wanted to share the policy on that. I'm not doing site visits yet because the negative impact of COVID. Attendance is down, and as things improve, I'll be, making a statewide list, and we're gonna, the programs that need the help we'll get a visit first, but eventually we'll get back on track to where I'll be doing all the scheduled visits. But right now, we want you to get back and serve kids, and not to worry that, I'm going to be there tomorrow and start looking around, but you'll get a notice from me, way in advance before any kind of a site visit. So I don't want you to be worrying. Okay, and I think we talked about the URLs at the beginning of the meeting, but the ERMS, well, it's not ERMS anymore. There's a new company, but they're going to send you a reminder if you don't have your URL in your local evaluation, because they check all that. And right now we've got about 2,000 pages of local evaluations, and we're about halfway through. We started in January, and they are going to follow up on data questions for do the numbers add up? Is there something that's missing, or possible misunderstanding of the data? Their job is to make sure we have the best quality data and check the validity of the data. Now, other questions that I'll follow up on is if there's something with your local objective that maybe you need to change or revise, and we need to address that. Or there might be something else in there that I have to contact you about, because ESSA says that I must use your local evaluations as part of deciding whether or not you get renewed. So I go through that. I don't follow up on as much as the evaluators, because there's no need. Most of the evaluations are, there's no questions for me, but there's a couple. So that's keeping me busy.
Vic, before we move on, we have a question related to site visit. This is from Lynn. She
Okay.
would like to know how site visits for those who are in their third year and looking to request the extension for the additional 2 years of funding, how will that affect that?
Well, maybe we'll just do that we'll do it in the summer. You know, technically, if you look at your grant agreement, if there's a problem, we can do a, move for grant termination within 10 days. Now, we don't often have to go that route. So, you will get your site visit. We might just need to follow up, as quick as we can.
Okay.
So
maybe
I'm
an
not worried about it.
individual.
You should not be worried about it either.
Okay. Vic, I want to call attention to time. We had said that we have a hard stop at 11, and it looks like we have about 8 minutes left.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah.
Well, we've got, I put in another PowerPoint about a national research study that they want people to participate in, and you'll get that in a PDF from the Alliance, Yeah, we don't have to go through this because it's pretty
Right.
self-explanatory.
I just want to show people that the slide is here. And
Yeah,
again, we'll
good
encourage
study.
people to look. We'll encourage people to look at this. Vic, do you know the timeline for this?
Well, they're looking for participants right now.
Okay.
And I included some slides on previous study that was done nationally by Deborah Vandell. And we're in good shape compared with other states. We've got a lot of data. And in fact, the Wallace Foundation contacted me yesterday asking some questions. And it's interesting that their question was this: a lot of states are mandating that you must have summer school and year round. And my response is, in Iowa, we follow the statute, and the applicant can choose whether they want to do summer only, year round only, or both year round and summer. It's your choice. And we're not going to, we're not going to change.
So again, folks, we'll include that information, the research study information PDF slides with today's materials from the meeting. Those will be posted to the website. So please take a look at that. And when we meet next, we can certainly talk about it. You can also reach out with questions in the meantime. Vic, do you want to tell people about our new OSTCP grant?
Oh, yeah. Well, while we were working from home, it's a little bit quieter, and we were able to do some extra paperwork. So we applied for this grant. It's I think it's about $2.2 million, $465,000 a year for 5 years. It's focused on secondary students and at the high school level. So we only had 4 high schools in the whole state of Iowa. And we contacted them, and they were happy to participate in this grant. And we submitted it, and we were one of 4 states that received this grant. And plus, there's another one that we don't know about yet through the Iowa Ag Literacy for after school STEM. So if we get that one too, that's a $3 million grant. We'll have availability for programs to participate in STEM with an ag, ag focus. So we've been working hard to make things better on our end, and trying to let you guys do what you need to do on your end to help the kids.
Vic, we also had a chat comment wondering when announcements were to be made for this most recent RFA process. If you can provide perhaps a timeline, or are you able to announce the the awards at this moment?
No, the timeline is posted on the department website. It says somewhere between March and April. We're still in March, and I am, maybe a third of the way through. It's something I do when I'm not in meetings that are
Okay.
required.
And then we have a question from Loris. He says he may be a little ahead of things here, but he was wondering how the new COVID bill will affect out-of-school programs and how we can access the funds.
I can't answer that right now. When these things come down, usually if they come from Washington, then the governor will decide, some allocations on their level, and then it might go, some money goes to the department, and then the director of the department decides. And then when it gets down to, to me, then I will notify you guys. But let me say this, that in the CARES Act and the ESSER funds, it is an allowable expense to provide for after-school programs. And what I think is going to happen is they're going to find out when they start assessing children again that we took a big hit and that proficiency is way down and that a lot more kids are going to need help. And districts are going to be working on, more robust summer programs than they've done in the past. And along with that, there might be, districts might say, hey, can you take another 10, 15 kids in to your after-school program? They really need the help. And, you might say, well, we don't have the funds. And the district says, oh, we've got ESSER funds. We'll provide it. So, things are going to be working a little bit different, but a lot of those funds are decided at the district level rather than at the state level. So with those CARES and ESSA funds, they went out to districts, and school boards and superintendents are deciding how those funds are spent. Not me.
Go ahead,
I would
Brittany.
I would also add too, separate from our work with Vic and the department, the Iowa After School Alliance is planning some advocacy around this. So stay tuned from our newsletter and things like that about things that we're doing separate from the work with the department to try to access those funds.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Again, we're coming up on time here. The last agenda item in this particular section is just the reminder of the Telegram app that was put together last month from the Communications Committee. So if you are interested in joining this online platform that will allow you to do some networking and some brainstorming with your fellow 21st century site people across the state, this will be a really good way to be able to do that. And there's some instruction here as to how to do that, including a link to this visual of downloading and so on and so forth. So Brittany, we're very short on time. Is there anything that you would like to say with the environmental scan for the MOT application at this call?
No, it can be an email.
Okay. So again, look for an email from Brittany and or myself relaying some information about that application to you. It's just a chance for you to be able to share some of your input and guidance. Want to remind everyone again that we have lots of upcoming professional development opportunities, including a STEM presentation on March 24th on how to use our brand new STEM for Iowa lesson plan repository. The March 30th professional development workshop, which will be a full day of some really great speakers. Look for some upcoming events in June. And then I also wanted to mention today on our call today that Impact will be held next September. So there has been lots of discussion around this, and the Professional Development Committee, along with input from all of you as grantees, have suggested that perhaps you like a fall conference as compared to a spring conference, because it allows you to maybe kind of start off the new year in a good way. Vic, there is the only other thing on the agenda that is perhaps a little bit new is the Senate bill update regarding remote learning and local control. We're at 11:01. I don't know if you can summarize this fairly quickly, or if you would prefer to wait on this.
Yeah, we'll wait on that.
Okay. And then last but not least, we will be posting the recording and all materials as well as some supplemental materials that Vic has shared with us today to that website. Again, you can find the information here. It does take me just a little bit of time to download and upload and get things put in place. So just a little bit of patience for that. I would guess maybe later today or perhaps Monday. But one thing we will absolutely have on there is the slides related to the new GEPRA measures. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for your time today. If I missed a question in the chat, please feel free to unmute and ask that now. If not, I wish you well, have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch. Goodbye, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.